Okay.
Okay, let's start the webinar this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the series of talks by the Cordillera Textiles Project. Our first talk will be on textile conservation, and we are pleased to have with us two of the known textile scholars, and upcoming textile scholar from the Philippines. Okay, I'd like to introduce Christine Muller-Radloff. Christine is a textile conservator at the Museum furVolkerkunde. I hope I pronounce it correctly, Christine, or the Ethnographic Museum in Dresden in Germany. Her area of expertise is on restoration and conservation work on ethnographic textiles and objects in combination with materials, with textiles and comparable materials around the world. She's also a textile engineer specializing in textile and clothing technology, as well as textile conservation, with degrees she obtained from the Technical University of Dresden and the Universität in Hagen. Our second speaker is Gracile Celine Roxas. She's a science researcher and emerging conservator, currently in her final year as an MPhil textile conservation student at the University of Glasgow. Her research interests include historic pigments and early synthetic organic dyes. Prior to studying in the UK, she finished her BS Chemistry at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños and worked as a chemist and conservation science researcher at the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. So we welcome our two wonderful speakers this afternoon, as well as our participants via Zoom. We have students from the University of the Philippines in Baguio, University of Baguio, UP Diliman, Xavier University, Philippine Military Academy in Baguio. We have the UST, University of Santo Tomas, and we also have participants from the NHCP, National Historical Commission of the Philippines, Culture Aid, Panublix, University of Southern Mindanao, DIMSU or Don Mariano Memorial, DMMSU. And of course, our participants from the University of Strathclyde, Los Alamitos in New Mexico, and the University of Glasgow in the UK. Thank you very much. So without further ado, we would like to start with Christine. Hello, Christine. Good morning there in Dresden, and it's afternoon here in Baguio. Okay, you can start, Christine, with your presentation.
Yes. Oh, next page.
Yes.
I found the button. Good morning and good afternoon. From Dresden in Germany, we have now 7 o'clock in the morning. Dear students from the different places, today I speak about my experience in conservation of world textiles and present you some textiles from Luzon, from the collection of the Ethnographic Museum in Dresden, some textiles from the northern area of Luzon, and others from Manila. I want to show you the different kinds of textiles. And sorry, I'm not a specialist of Philippine geography. If some mistakes, please, not so, say not so strong to me. At first, I want to speak about the definition of a museum. Now I want to talk about the definition established by ICOM, the International Council of Museums. I'm a member of this organization since 1990. And how you see here, there are two different definitions. It was a big discussion about the new definition. The old was from 2007. And now we have the definition see below. A museum is a non-profit permanent institution in the service of society to researches, collects, conserves, interprets, and exhibits tangled and entangled heritage, open to the public, accessible and inclusive. Museums foster diversity and sustainability. They operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. That's why we share knowledge now. On this diagram, I want to show you these functions and a little bit describe what it means. Communicate means communicate, work with diverse audiences from all ages. Knowledge transfer in analog and digital forms. And before we can do it, we have to start it in clockwise. Collect, conserve, research, exhibit or publicate, and then we can communicate. And these are the steps for objects in the museum. And except this one, all others are the function of an restorer, conservator. So, and here is a little bit illustrated my work in my last 40 years. This works. Conservator is not only a conservator, he has also research, he also work on computer. This picture is from the beginning of the 1990s. And here we prepare an exhibition. And here I speak about my work, and here I work with children. It's a little bit to illustrate what my work means. The next is, now I want a little bit show in detail which works we have as restorers. If we look at the museum's object from the conservator point of view, we are often dealing with objects that have already aged and are therefore particularly vulnerable. Care must therefore be taken to ensure that not further long-term damages occur, but you can only delay the time of decay with this. Textiles are very difficile objects because they are destroy very fast and have not so stability like others. The left is a cloth from the Yemen area, and right is a hunter bag from North America. Our point of my work and the work of my colleagues is preventive conservation. This means climate. It is important that there is no short-term change in the climate. Otherwise, there is a risk of moisture formation when the temperature falls below the dew point. There should also be a little light possible as this leads in destruction of the organic matter. Here you see the values which we decided for the last years. And here are some measure instruments, the digital and the mechanical instruments for moisture and temperature. But at the moment, we think about changing of this and extent of this values because of save more energy. A second point is pest management. And right, you see a sticky trap for counting insects to see which insects exist. It's only a measure instrument to know what you can do. And the other point is look in your old books or inventory books or notices. What is, we found here some interesting thing because poison of arsenic and also oilan. And it was written, I think, 60, 70 years before. And we found this A for arsenic and other things. And this gives you an information what happened with the objects in the museum. Now you can measure this with different ways. Left, it's with X-ray fluorescence machine, and right, it's like with stripes, test stripes. But it's not so sure like the right, like the left method. But the left method is much more expensive. And if you know that objects are with poisons, you have to decide what protections you have to wear. And you see here, the left was a full body protection to handling in the museum in Paris. And right is our new protection tools. These are masks with ventilators in the back, which change the air and give us fresh air. And around you see some labels which are on the objects. So the right are for protection, you see, and the left which risks are possible and how you to handle also on loan and for the loaners to inform. The next point of my work is storage, prepare for storage, pack. And here you see how to pack. To roll, it's better than to fold because folds make some I don't know the English word.
Creases.
And these are for a long time storage are very properly. And you also have to take acid-free paper and cardboards and store it. But here I said proper packing is optimal storage. It means if you good store, it's good for the future of the object. Another part of my work is cleaning, dry cleaning and wet cleaning. There are also some things to consider when cleaning soiled textiles. First, check whether the object is suitable for cleaning process. Therefore, it is necessary to test the color fastness. It is necessary to check very carefully what kind of soiling it is, because not every is dirt in the museum sense. Some stains have the scientific value and should not be removed. This means this is a part of the object. Another part is labeling. Inventory numbers for textiles should be written on textile materials. Cardboard tags with metal parts and wires are unsuitable. Also, nothing should be glued. Here I sewed. At first, it was textile band. And later I take tie whack because I could take a stripe and write, and then I cut and sew it in this style. But no metal, no glue, because this can destroy the textile. Our point is packing, transporting, and this for loans, and especially difficult it is with the objects like this object contaminated with poison arsenic. So, and now it's our funny depot. It's for textile depot. Here you see is one of these parts. You can move it. And these are for rolled big textiles. These are our old store boxes. And here are special boxes for poisoned objects. You see it's labeled and especially closed. And I hope you have not such problem, but we have it. And our point is exhibit. If you exhibit textiles, it's a little bit difficult because you have not put needles or nails or something in it, and you have to look how fragile it is. The best is lay down like these carpets, but if you want to hang, then put, like here it's hanging and here it's hanging, put on the backside special stripe or tunnel here's for a stick, put it in through, and then not directly vertically every time, a little bit from late, not 5 degrees from the vertical is the minimum. The best is this version, but it's also from this point, because the textile laid down and the energy, the physical strength lays down. It's longer to describe, but it's physical process that helps to protect the objects. And here you see our Turkmen glass box in former time in Leipzig. Every time it's not possible to do all best, but you have to optimize what is best, good for the object and what is possible. Here you show you our Leipzig dress from Palestine. It was because of bad hanging destroyed here, and I had restored, and These are a layer down support for sewing on it, like here. And this was supported from top to here to make it possible to exhibit without this danger. Here is a quote from Ethiopia, from Dresden Museum, and you see there is faded because light damage. This is the problem, how much light you give on it. And the best is nothing light, but you have to optimize, and there are also values seen before. Other problem could be mold, like here, or moths, like here. And you have to protect it. That's why you have to get climate values and put it in glass boxes. The next point is, if you have new objects, you have to make, one moment. When you collect data for the inventory of an object, a questionnaire is very suitable for systematic recording and can be easily integrated into a digital database. Here you see the form, and these are the points you have to fill out. And here you see a view of an object from Luzon, and I will show it next also. It is the main part to describe what it is, which material, which technique, sites, and so on. And this part is a special module for conservation work. And here you see we can, here can you see every work on the object, the data, when, and if you open here, you see what we have done, and you can import the pictures and the reports, and here, and it is to use from colleagues from all places. We have 3 museums, that's why it's most important. So the next, I will show you some objects of our museum, which are from Luzon and northern Luzon part. Here are this shows textiles from, I hope I describe it all, pronounce it, Ilocos Nortis, and it's from before 1893. These 2 clothes. This slide shows 2 fabrics from Manila, from Abaca, Musa Textilis, and also these are from the time 1860 in our museum. The next is, these are fabrics made from piña fibers, also from the 1868, before 1868. 1868, oh, sorry. And these are clothes made of these textiles. Here are shirts for women from northern Luzon before 1890. And these are clothing for, for women from northern Luzon before 1887. This jacket is a shirt, and this is apron. And this was, for me, especially interesting. These are oversleeves for women from northern Luzon before 1890 from both sides. There's my mouse. And here a little bit different materials. Now I'll show you some textiles from northern Luzon before 1888 that made from imperata, cylindrica, and backlogs. Wo ist meine Maus? Ah, yes. And these are two bags from northern Luzon before 1890. Left is weaving from cotton and right are both sides of a bag from bark cloth decorated by embroideries. And the next group, these are braidings. I hope this is the right English word. From Luzon between 1865 and 1890, left a mat for sleeving, right for sitting on it, and down is a belt from northern Luzon for women. And here I show you cotton thread making tools and the backstrip loom without warp and weft. The loom is from northern Luzon before 1890, the other tools from Manila before 1865. Finally, I show you a backstrip loom before and after conservation. It is from northern Luzon before 1890. And this is a view in the online collection of our museum with the page of the loom at previous page. It is to find from all over the world, but currently only in German. So, and now I say thank you and waiting for questions. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christine, for that very informative presentation. We will now have G. Roxas for the second presentation, and we will hold the Q&A after the two presentations. So you can also send in your questions through our chat box or later. No? So thank you, Christine, and we'll see you later after G's presentation. Thank you so much. All right.
I think you remember some of the objects.
Yes, I was able to hold the objects while I was doing the research in Dresden. Fantastic. Okay. So now let's move on to G. Roxas. We'll talk about the role of science in textile conservation. Okay, G, you can now share your slides.
Just a sec. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
So, okay, I'm going to start. Magandang hapon, Pilipinas, and good morning to us here in the European region. Good evening to the rest of the world. I am G. Roxas, and today I will be talking about science in textile conservation. So just to set the expectations, this will not be in any way a review of the latest scientific research in textile conservation, but rather a glimpse of how science sits comfortably as part of the decision-making process in conservation, as well as bits of my experience coming from a chemistry background in taking a plunge into this very interesting and very challenging discipline. So just for context, I got introduced to the field of conservation when I worked as a chemist and science researcher for several years at the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, or NHCP. And I left NHCP in 2021 to study textile conservation at the University of Glasgow here in the UK. and I am now in my final year in the course together with my classmates in the picture. In this presentation, I will be talking mainly about three things. The first one being what science is like in conservation from my perspective as a textile conservation student. In the second part, which I call getting the hang of it, I will be talking about the project that I'm currently working on, which I believe is a good example of a conservation case where my knowledge of materials and chemistry has been integral. The last part, which is dedicated to the students and perhaps the science and history researchers in the audience who are looking for investigative projects or thesis ideas, will be about areas of textile conservation that I think would benefit from more scientific investigation. So as you may have picked from the presentation earlier by Christine, textile conservation is interdisciplinary in nature. The conservator is often required to look at the different aspects of the object they are conserving, including its attribution and provenance, its appearance, material components and construction, and of course, the types of damages or deterioration that it has been undergoing. A certain level of craft and manual skills is also required, especially in the actual treatment, and sometimes in displaying and making mounts for storage. But for this presentation, as promised in the title, we will be focusing more on the science aspect. So what does science look like in conservation? People tend to associate science with people in lab coats and colorful chemicals in flasks, and maybe some analytical equipment. While that is sometimes the case, we often overlook the fact that the scientific method actually starts with looking and observing. By looking at an object and using our senses, we are able to know more about its material components, whether it is made purely of textile or if there are other materials like wood, metal, plastic, or paint present. The texture and drape would already give an idea what type of fabric it is made of. And looking more closely, you might be able to identify how the textile was made, giving answers to questions like, were these designs introduced into the textiles by means of embroidery? Or is it part of the weave structure, as in supplementary weaving? What's going on with assemblages like this? How are metal threads made? Are they purely made of metal? Or does it actually have a fiber core? Does it have materials, colors, and designs associated with a particular geographic location or time period? Moreover, looking into the object allows the conservator to identify signs of deterioration, such as discoloration and staining, distortion, structural damage, and previous repairs. In other words, it allows them to identify the nature of the problem that needs to be addressed by the conservation treatment. However, there are times when unaided looking and touching are not sensitive enough. For example, to be able to tell two types of fibers apart or identify fibers that are not familiar to the conservator. Microscopy is widely used for this purpose, as some types of fibers, especially those that come from natural sources, can be identified based on the morphology or appearance of individual fibers. Cotton fibers, if you can see my pointer, would typically look like twisted ribbons, while linen, which is also a cellulosic fiber that comes from a plant source, would have a bamboo-like appearance. Wool and other animal fur and hair would usually have a medulla and some scales, while silk, which is also proteinaceous and comes from an animal source, would appear smooth and almost featureless. It should be noted, however, that these are what fibers in good condition look like, and their appearance can be influenced by manufacturing techniques of the textile and the treatments that they have undergone. as well as the object's age and condition. If there's also a possibility that that the object is made of regenerated or synthetic fibers, microscopy alone may not be sufficient to completely identify the material. Sometimes further investigation into the chemical composition of the fiber is performed, especially for man-made fibers and maybe fiber blends as well. Some people use burning and solubility tests in which the behavior of the fiber towards fire and solvents, respectively, are indicative of the type of polymer that it is. An infrared or IR spectrometer is an analytical equipment used in chemistry to identify organic compounds based on their functional groups. This can therefore be used in distinguishing, for example, between plant-based fibers and animal-sourced fibers, because the ones from plants would be made of cellulose, which is a carbohydrate, while those from animals are made of protein. Because silk fibers could sometimes look as smooth as some synthetic fibers like polyester, IR spectroscopy or some chemical tests may be the way to go. This is, of course, not to say that chemical analysis is superior to simply looking and touching or examining under magnification. Such analytical techniques would require a certain amount of sample, and since conservators deal with valuable and non-renewable objects, this may not be always possible. Moreover, they give different sets of information about the fibers, so actually it would be best, if possible, to put together the information from both visual examination and chemical analysis. Different wavelengths of light, such as UV, could potentially reveal textures or surface characteristics like coatings and finishes that are not normally visible under normal lighting conditions. The appearance of stains under UV could indicate its source, like for foxing stains, which are brown or orange or brown spots that you would typically find in old books as well as old clothes. Foxing stains that fluoresce under UV are usually associated with microorganisms, while those that are caused by the presence of metals tend to appear darker. Moving a step further from looking, examining, and analyzing, the conservator uses the information collected from those steps to determine what treatments for cleaning and consolidation would be appropriate for the object. Again, this can be likened with a scientific method in which one makes inferences from their observations and performs experiments or tests to prove their hypotheses. Testing is important because it minimizes the risk associated with every intervention done by the conservator. It can sometimes involve making mock-ups to simulate the conditions of an object to be treated and to test the treatment before performing it on an actual object. Here are pictures of my classmates testing their treatments on mock-ups. On the left is Lauren making a mock-up of the cuff of the jacket that she has been working on to practice the application of an adhesive support. On the right is Tabby, who prepared soiled fabrics for testing different methods of cleaning. She wrote about this in a blog post of our program, which I will probably share later in the chat. So just to summarize this part of my presentation, this is how I would describe what it has been like integrating science in textile conservation. It does not necessarily involve state-of-the-art laboratory equipment, although that would be really nice. Would be quite useful in some cases, as long as there is enough sample available. Nevertheless, just looking and touching already extracts a lot of information from the object that is useful in informing the conservation procedure. Tests are done to minimize the risk of damaging the object during treatment, and these would sometimes involve making mock-ups. Finally, Science applied in conservation is best used in combination with sensitivity to the object's meaning and purpose, good hand skills, and creativity. So for this next part of my presentation, I am going to talk about a project that I have been working on as part of my course. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose too many details about this object at the moment, but I hope to share them in the future, hopefully in in another platform. So the object illustrated here is a christening robe made of undyed cotton that was damaged in a fire. Although it mostly did not catch fire, the fabric suffered thermal damage, which made most of its upper parts brown and brittle. It was stored on a plastic hanger, which melted and resolidified and eventually got stuck to the fabric. The goal of my treatment is to clean and stabilize the robe so it can be safely returned to its owner. However, the plastic hanger was forcing the garment to be in a rigid and awkward position, making it impossible to properly do cleaning and consolidation. Taking the hanger out was therefore imperative. Mechanically removing it was actually effective, but only to some extent, as some of it was more stuck to the fabric than the others, and some areas of the fabric are just too brittle to be pulled away. The other way to manipulate the plastic that I thought of was to soften it using either solvent or heat. So this schematic diagram summarizes the experiments that I carried out to determine which would be the most effective approach to the problem. The first step was, of course, to identify what exactly the polymer is that makes up the hanger, because this will narrow down the range of solvents and temperatures that I will use in the succeeding experiments. Using IR spectroscopy, the plastic was identified as polypropylene. So polypropylene is an polyolefin, meaning it is a polymer composed of only carbon and hydrogen. So it is very non-polar. So this led to my decision of using non-polar or weakly polar solvents in carrying out the solubility test. There are handbooks where one could find the melting temperatures of polymers. So knowing the type of polymer would already narrow down my working temperature range when I simulate the melting of the hanger. Using pieces that I cut from the hanger that stuck to the object, I first carried out solubility testing at room temperature. It would be advantageous if there would be any solvent that could effectively soften the plastic, because it would prevent the need to expose the fabric of the garment to high temperatures. However, none of the solvents I tested were able to dissolve or even soften the plastic. So this led me to the decision of proceeding with the other route, which is heating. I eventually observed that the plastic already softens at 135 degrees Celsius, which is a few degrees below what I found is its melting temperature range. So while doing heating experiments, I also took this opportunity to prepare mock-ups by pressing softened plastic onto a piece of cotton fabric and letting it cool. So using the mock-ups, I experimented with different temperatures using a heated spatula to get an estimate of the appropriate level that I could use on the actual object to soften the hanger enough so that I do not have to pull the fabric away too hard. So eventually, I decided to use a higher temperature on the actual object, as its fabric is more brittle than my mock-ups. Using a combination of heat and my gentlest attempts at pulling away the fabric from the plastic, I managed to completely remove the hanger. There were pieces of fabric that got taken away along with the hanger, indicated by the arrows, as these areas are almost sort of coated with the melted plastic. But despite the few losses, the garment has been freed from its distortion. The hanger is not there anymore to prevent the access of cleaning agents during wet cleaning. And it is now possible to introduce some pieces of support fabric onto the areas of structural damage. So for the last part of my presentation, I've come up with this list of areas in textile conservation that I think might benefit from scientific research. Examination and documentation are an important part of conservation as it informs the treatment that will be performed. The current examination and imaging techniques practiced by conservators could further be improved so that more detail can be taken without too much handling or moving the object or putting the object to more risk of damage. There are existing analytical techniques in chemistry and other branches of science for identifying fibers, dyes, and other material components of historic objects, as well as their degradation products. But these would usually require a certain amount of sample, which may not be possible to satisfy given the limited amount of sample that can be collected from historic artifacts without causing significant change or damage and without ethical issues. So I think developing methods that would require little to no sample collection would be worth pursuing. And with sustainability, economy, and supporting local products in mind, I included here the last two items in the list. It may be worth exploring the use of locally produced fibers and other materials that are cheaper or produces lower carbon footprint, not only as materials used in the actual conservation treatment, but perhaps also in the display and the storage of artworks and artifacts. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, fantastic, G, for that wonderful presentation. That's very informative as well. No? So now we will open the floor if there are questions from our participants, from the Zoom participants. Okay, Christine, are you there? Christine? All right, okay. So thank you for both of your presentations. They are very informative and we learned so much from the presentation. So I would like to start probably the question for the both of you. Since you are in one in the textile laboratory and then of course Christine working in the museum. And the materials that you handle are made of organic materials. Are there also in your research or in your experiences have encountered traditional methods of conservation? Like, of course, in Northern Luzon, Christine presented materials made of bark, made of bast fiber, pineapple fiber, abaca, and all that. So, and Gracile presented the ones on cotton as well. So are there traditional forms of caring for textiles where originally this came from? Okay, let's start with Christine.
Oh, this is a difficult question.
Oh, is it?
The different kinds of organic textiles, different kinds of conservation, but like Sarah spoke, Gracile. What is your name?
Gracile.
Gracile. Told it's a different between organic and with plant and animal fibers. You have to protect it a little bit in different, but for all textiles we have to be very careful because it's polymers, and if you give energy in form of light, temperature, or something, it destroys it. And the main point for us is to protect the objects so long as possible. And so we have that. But in many cases, we have not only cotton or other things, we have all what is possible on the world, but it's also in combination with other materials. There's a metal button or something, and so you have to find a compromise. Metal dislikes wetness, and text fibers need 50%, about 50% relative humidity, and so it's not so easy, but we have to decide what is good. The same is for light, the same is for to bring it in a form. I think we meet us on the cloth, what was destroyed here, because sometimes it's mechanically, sometimes it's chemically. I say every time we have to look what happened physically and chemically, and have to decide what is the best compromise for store and exhibit objects. And in the exhibition is the main fact how to exhibit, and the exhibitors are the visitors are interested in. That's if it's too dark, they cannot see, but if it's too much light, it's destroyed. And these are every time are compromises. So it's in all the cases to see what happened or have in the background of the head before you decide. And in many cases, we have discussions with the curators. They have funny ideas for exhibition, and we say, no, isn't possible, or think about this. And also, if you have animal fibers, you have to look for moth protection. And we say, please, all textiles in glass boxes. And say, no, it's not impressive. And so we have every time discussions. I think that it's the problem in all museums or exhibitions. But if you have to protect in our museums, the main fact is to protect the textiles so long as possible. And so have also decide the exhibitors or the curators think it's a museum's textile, you can only do this, or it destroys, and the conservators have to do so much, but it's not the right way. I think this is.
Thank you, Christine. G.
So unfortunately, I personally don't have experience with using traditional techniques. Well, in my mind, traditional techniques meaning maybe Philippine technique, Philippine or Asian techniques being applied in conservation. But I've heard about some efforts by SPAFA, I think. So I've attended a webinar before about the use of traditional ways of warding off pests to protect traditional textiles. And also I remember in class, because I think there was a previous dissertation that looked into the use of natural saponins for wet cleaning. I personally have no experience in using such substances, but yeah, some people are exploring the possibility of using it in conservation.
Yeah, the context of my question was when we go on field work, when the Corditex team would go on field research from the Cordilleras in northern Luzon and have observed other communities in Visayas and Mindanao, there is like a storage, there's a system of storage using indigenous materials or organic materials that are used for keeping their textiles from pests or from humidity and all that. No, so sometimes they wrap it in abaca bark of a tree, or they kept it in a like a organic container and all that. So I thought, and if this heirloom textiles, when this was shown to us, it's well preserved. So I was wondering if there's traditional ways of conservation or keeping them intact for a long time, especially for heirloom textiles. Okay.
And maybe it's a good thing to look into, maybe by
Yes, or
researchers.
yes.
Maybe a potential thesis topic for a student out there.
Okay. Thank you, G and Christine. Let's look at the questions from our participants. Okay, Hannah, Rina Doldulao, and I think the question is towards me. What organic container, like clay or jar? The organic containers that we saw are wrapped in abaca bark. No, not abaca, the outer part of the abaca. And then some are kept in banana stalks, no, dried ones. Banana leaves are kept on that one. So I'm just curious, if organic materials would wither away, then how do we prevent further deterioration of the textiles? So that's the role of science, no, we're talking about. Okay, there's a question from Hannah Duldula. I think this is addressed to Christine. Was that a headdress that you presented earlier in your slide? Was there a headdress? Was that a headdress that you presented?
So I think she means no, it was not a headdress. I think it was a belt. She means. This, oh, well, it's this one. Oh, why it's not sharp.
Maybe it's
I think I know why.
Okay.
Because my
Okay.
around.
Is that
No. Yeah,
oh,
this one is not a headdress. It's a belt.
It's a belt for Kalinga women that is placed underneath the
Kalinga, yes.
Yeah.
From rattan, leaves, stripes, and yes.
Yes. That's
It's
the belt
written.
of the women that they wear.
I think this one was
wraparound skirt. It's made of organic material and some
rattan. We call rattan.
Yeah. Okay. We have questions from our staff here. So they sent me this piece of paper. The question is about, okay, the context is that we have so many textiles in the Philippines that are stored in museums, especially in repositories in the US, in the UK, and of course in Germany. We have a lot of these textiles that were collected since 100 years ago. So may I, okay, they are asking if things get worse, no, and they are stored in your museums for a long time. How long is their shelf life still if there is preventive conservation?
Can you a little bit more describe what you want?
The question of the staff, if they are stored in the museums for a long time, there's preventive conservation, how long will they last? For maybe X number of years.
I think the preventive conservation in the kind of pest control changed in former times. There were different kinds of poisons, and now we want to use non-poisoned materials, but what is from the former time inside in the objects, it's very difficult to remove. But I say every time the best objects could be be afraid. It could be the poisoned objects, because that's why they are protected until now. But it's especially for the objects from felt and viewer, and not from these objects. I think in the last 100 years, especially in Germany, there were 2 wars and something, and it was protected in glass boxes, in one layer over layer folded, but folded is not good, but it's give not space for air, and you have only destroying on the fault lines and such things. I think it's to be careful, to protect, to collect, to clean it if it's possible. Now we have some projects to step by step clean the areas, objects from different areas, because dirt destroy also objects. And the other is pest control. In every time look for the objects, and if you found something, remove. Or now we have a nitrogen chamber. I know it's a discussion about this method, but it's very helpful. It removes the oxygen for some weeks, and we put the object. And if you get new objects, then put preventive in this box and guess it, and before you give it in the collection, then if comes new things, it's different kinds of animals can destroy. They are removed from the object, and then you can give to the old objects. But sometimes we also look how fantastic are the objects after 100 years. Some are destroyed, but you have every time to know it's old. And if you use it for exhibition or something, you have to be careful with it, because it's aged over the long time, and you cannot use it like a new one.
Yes, exactly. Okay, thank you, Christine. I'll ask later about the arsenic. Yes, G.
Oh, was the question also addressed to me? Well, it's a difficult question, because it's actually, to be honest, it's not something I would necessarily ask, because among other concerns, the purpose of conservation is also not just the longevity of the object, but also making them accessible, allowing the objects to serve their purpose. So I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. And yeah, and I just want to say that, yeah, there are also other questions to ask, like not just the how long. We don't just aim for a long life, but also like a life lived for the objects that we consider as precious and historic and cultural.
Okay, thank you, G. Yes, because I've seen in most museums, they do a lot of preventive conservation, and some textiles are those that cannot be salvaged or saved. They are kept in one place of the museum. No, it's like they don't have life anymore, so they are kept on the side in the storage room. I don't know what kind of deaccessioning are being done for those textiles of, let's say, 150 years ago. Okay, I wanted to ask Christine about the arsenic. Why did they use arsenic in the past? Because I know when I was in Dresden and of course in Berlin, we had to work for 2 hours with full
Yeah, like the picture for me.
yeah, and then everything. Why did they use arsenic in the past?
In the case of my museum, in Dresden, I know that it's historically was together with a National History Museum, and in the National History to protect or prepare animals, they used substances with arsenic salts like milk and like powder, and our museum was close to it, and they used nearly the same methods. But I have heard about collectors. They give these poisons already in the objects when they collect it outside before they give it in the museum. Sometimes these poisons are already in the objects when we get it in the museum, but also in the long time there we have a big collection of poisons which are used. I remember my beginning in the 80s, we used a spray with lindan and permethrin, and so it was really common. And I think in the time before, in the beginning of the 20th century, it was the time when chemistry in Germany, in worldwide, grows up, and poisons were used for war and so it was, I think it was a time of chemistry, and so, and to protect, they don't know what they do for the future. They want to protect the objects, and so we have the problem with the poisons, and now we have to test, or sometimes we find stripes for protect against moths, and in different colors, and of the colors we say it's from this time, it's this time, and this time. And now we give this information in our database, because it's not so easy to remove it, but we have to know it, and the people who work with these objects have to protect. Because the health of the people is more important than the objects. Our meaning is to protect the objects, but before the objects are the people. But it's in former time it was common to use poisons to kill insects or other animals, I think.
Thank you, Christine. So that's very hazardous, actually, and poisonous material, chemical that was used for our northern Luzon textiles, because we can actually smell it when they were examined. Okay, thank you. We have a question from our participants. Sim Tan, he would like to ask something about, okay. So his question is, sometimes a textile made with abaca fiber is found with severe creases or folds that are caused by folding over a long time. And these creases are very difficult to remove. What methods can be employed to reduce the creases?
Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
I have not abaca, but remember, but I know this from cotton, from batiks from Indonesia. We had also folded textiles. It's you have at first to be careful if you unfold it, and then you have to look for relative humidity, go up a little bit, or that you can fold it out. But I think it's never possible to remove the folds at all. You can make it flat. If you roll it, I have seen it will be in future better, but it's not fully removed, the faults and the lines of the fault, but not strong remove. I remember to an object, it was from, I think South Sea, it was a grass or something, bast material. It was broken on this area. It was like a shirt or like a poncho, and it was broken here because it was folded in our depot, and then I put some more and more, and we had not climate control or sometimes problems with the climate in former times, and so it's break here. It's broken, and then I have to restore it, and so at first I put it in. In this case, it was possible. I said we have to put it in a wet, flat, like I think you have seen it in the picture. And then the material was very soft. It's especially for plant textiles, and you can unfold it. And I restored it, and after that we put it on a pillow, which was round, that it was not so hard folded, and exhibit it. I think it's different, but you have also to look that it's not too wet, then it swells and the fiber can destroy the textile if it's too wet. I think it's a difficult problem, but I think in the main case you have to put it with more relative humidity. If too much water, it's not good. If you make also compresses on the area, it's also not so. I have done it sometimes, but you have to look how it works. I think you need a little bit experience that it works, but fully you cannot remove it.
Okay, thank you, Christine. G, you have insights on removing creases on abaca fiber.
Yes, I agree with Christine. I would be very careful in recommending solutions for something that I haven't seen or actually haven't touched in person. I don't know the context of the object. Like, is it clothing? Is it supposed to be flat? Does it have dyes in it? Because yes, water moisture can act as a plasticizer to sort of recover for the fibers to recover some of its flexibility. It can help, but also at the same time, yes, it would be difficult for a material like abaca that's very stiff to completely be flattened or recover its previous state. Yeah. Bottom line is I agree with what Christine said.
Christine, thank you, G. Christine.
A little addition. If you work with compresses of material, Gore-Tex material or such, at first clean all. Dry cleaning before you make it wet, because if you begin with wetness, in any case, you have to remove the dirt, because chemical reaction can start. And so at first step, before unfolding, clean it dry. And then you can do some compresses of Gore-Tex or climate chamber or something to make it a little bit more wet, but not haruk, but it's slowly. And the same is to dry after unfolding. It's in former time I take the steam iron or something. I think now be careful.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, G and Christine. I think I would like to share the ones I saw at the Lake Cebu in for the Tivoli weavers. When they it's made of abaca fiber, and then they wash the cloth in the river, and then they dry it, air dry, and then if there are some not flat area in the textile, they would use a massive shell, flat shell, and then they would like
To
iron
burn it,
to
to
remove the
burnish the.
yeah. It's we saw it at the School for Living Traditions. The objective of that kind of method is to flatten the material. So I'm not a textile conservator, but maybe to remove it, the creases. No, I don't know. So like G and Christine said, we have to look at the nature of the material. No, maybe it's 150 years old and then we're using this shell, but of course you have to understand the context and the nature, the condition of the material first. Okay, thank you, Christine.
I've also been to the School of Living Tradition, and it also, the burnishing effect also makes the tinalak shiny,
And soft.
which
Yeah.
yes, which increases the quality of
The material.
textile.
Wearable. Okay, we have some comments and questions from here in our chat box. If you can have a look at that. We have a question from Awi Aurelio. From a clothing technology standpoint, I believe that conservation is heavily tied to sustainability and preserving quality, even with textiles we currently use at home. With learnings from textile conservation abroad and the rise of use of indigenous fabric with contemporary clothing, would it be worthwhile to develop storing, washing, drying, and pressing materials such as detergents, fabric conditioners, mothballs, among others, that are specialized for Filipino indigenous fabrics still used at home? Or are these materials already available in the market? So the question is, Aoi, has something to do with textiles, no, specifically for indigenous fabric, that we should develop proper storage system, washing system, drying, pressing materials, and others, especially for indigenous fabrics from the Philippines or even from other places? Or are these already available in the market? Do they sell this, or can we avail of this kind of conservation in the market? G, would you like to start first?
I don't think I've heard of anything that's commercially available, like specifically for indigenous fabrics. But yes, I am generally all for research and further study into these into traditional techniques, actually practical techniques, anything that would make it easier and cheaper for Filipinos to do conservation. I mean, of course, we learn from the Western practices, but I am all for discovering our own practices that would suit our needs and would suit our values. So yes, I would definitely, I'm in support of studying those things further.
Okay, thank you. G, Christine?
So detergents, I would say in the museum we don't use trade common detergents, washing powder or so. In former time we used, but now we don't use. Also what you said, the soap route, I remember my colleagues had done it in former time. It works, but it's also uncommon now in our museum. There are special detergent for restoration. in our field. There was specially produced for this. I remember from a museum in former time, but I don't know where it's come from now. It's mainly uncommon to wash. In former time, we washed much more than now, because it's not so. I remember for a ship, textiles is seal. The ship, a little ship, and there was a textile. And seal, I don't know, it's the English word.
Yeah.
And I washed it. I think it's very stable. And then I washed, and it's full. I had no stability. I had to support it later for the exhibition, but it was for me, oh, that would be better no washed. But now it's. Yeah, but in collections, it's uncommon, and there are special detergents for washing.
Okay. Would you recommend that detergent for textile for washing, or we can buy that in the market, or it's a special conservation material?
I don't know where it's come now. I think it's from the chemistry industry. My former colleague used it. It's from Bayer, but I used it a special made in the museum, and I have enough now for my time. But I think you have to ask our museums. But it's common in restoration groups, which are the firms are produce special detergents for restoration.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, sometimes we encountered in the Corditex old textiles from churches, and then textiles from families who kept it for a long time, and so we see some of this are being washed, no, like using Clorox or the English name for Clorox cleaning bleaching liquid, no, for textiles. So that totally damaged, no, the stability, even the color of the original textile faded because of this. Now, so for our viewers, for our participants here, let's be careful with the use of bleaching liquid or other kinds of detergents. Okay, thank you.
I would just like to maybe encourage, if there are science researchers out there, these are opportunities to talk to conservators, maybe ask them what they need, and maybe experiment, maybe modify what is commercially available, make improvements to what is currently available, and hopefully design something that is suitable for conservation use.
Yes. All right.
You don't bleach.
Yeah, you don't bleach textile or use harmful detergents, no, that will actually ruin the textile.
But I know a conservator who do it. I think in special cases it's okay, but we don't do it.
Yeah.
If there are something what is dirt, if it's possible to wash, okay, and if not, it stays there. It shows a part of the history of the object.
Right. Yeah, the biography of the textile is gone if you wash it. Now all the details are gone. Okay, we have a very important question from our attendee. He said, or she said something like, I see textile conservation and archival work as similar in orientation. I wonder what can we do more to encourage more scholars to pursue this kind of inquiry or work? Yeah, so in the Philippines, we have a lot of textiles in museums and all that, but we have very little conservators now. So G is there and a few more others who are really doing work on conservation of textiles. So the question is, how can we encourage more scholars or students to pursue textile conservation as a work or as an area of inquiry on textile conservation? How do you encourage others to pursue this career in textile conservation? G first, okay?
Okay. First of all, I think those practicing in the professions should talk to each other, because sometimes it feels like it feels lonely to be in such a niche field. So it would be a start to talk to each other. Even though there are, for example, for myself, so there are not many conservators in the Philippines, but I get to talk to museum people, to allied fields. So I guess that's the first step for practitioners to talk to each other. And then maybe that would create, like, maybe that would be an encouragement for each other to talk more externally, to maybe reach out, to publish, to hold conferences, to use social media in spreading the word, in making the public more aware about this this very interesting and very challenging field. So yeah, I guess that's the starting point.
Yeah, thank you, G. Christine,
Mm.
how can you encourage others to pursue textile conservation as a career or as an area of inquiry?
In my case, it was a little bit unusual. You described by biography, but the normal education way is you stay one year in a museum as an intern. Former times was 3 years. Then you go to the university. There's some in Germany, and have I think now it's bachelor and master. As I think at first 3 years, and after that 2 years. 3 years bachelor and 2 years master, and then you can get a degree of conservation, but it's very difficult to get a job in a museum. Many of the restaurants are freelance and get only projects or work for different kinds. But in my case, I say I'm for more than 40 years in the ethnographic museums, and for me was at first time my education as a textile engineer, and then later I studied also conservation. But the main school was to work in the museum. And to see what happened, it's for me so sorry that the long time jobs will much more lower than in former time, because if you stay for a long time in a museum or in an institution, you see and know what was in that time with the object. For me, if I see an object, I know in this time it was in this exhibition, there was this problem, and then there was this, and then we had restored, and then it was pub. And now is my opinion to bring all my experience and what I found of my former colleagues in our database. I showed you the database in the presentation, that people after me can search in the database what happened with the object. Then you cannot do it like a receipt for a cake. You, in every case, and also on the same object in different times, you have to decide what can you do, what can you not do. And so I think it's a long life learning, but you need a good fundament on education to work on this place, and also good, I say, a safety position, or to work on it. for me is I need also time to restore. In former times, the first picture was a carpet from Morocco. I worked on it over 4 years because not all time it was so much time to work on it. If there are other problems, but you need oh yes, I don't know the English word. And you have also to search before, you have to document it before, you have to document it while the restoration and after that, and you have to bring it for future generation documented for future generation. So that's was it.
Thank you, Christine. We have some colleagues as well in in Indonesia, Textile Conservasi. There are about 6 or more of them who are training younger textile conservation, younger generation of textile conservation, textile conservators in that area. So we hope that we can also have this kind of exchange of textile conservators. There's also some universities that would offer textile conservation. Of course, there's a network of textile conservation, so organizations, universities, institutions who are offering short-term courses on conservation of textiles. So let me just read Sim Tan's, one of our attendees, regarding this. So he said that there are very few trained conservators, not just in the Philippines, but in the whole of Southeast Asia, where traditional textiles are very important. But internationally, one of the problems is that there are fewer institutions teaching teaching conservation. I think there should be advocacy for Southeast Asian governments to develop professional conservation courses within Southeast Asia itself. Yeah, so this is very important to make a point that we need to ask our governments, maybe universities even, to support students, to send them to conservation schools, and also to attend seminars given by various institutions. All right, so
I think there's an initiative in UP Diliman because they have several conservation projects, and they're also planning on turning it into a program eventually. I was also actually involved in a few meetings already. So hopefully, I mean, this is still an uphill battle because to be honest, conservation is really expensive, and
yes.
Like it's the need for conservation is not something people immediately see, but yeah, hopefully we get there. I mean, people are taking effort in making this possible, and hopefully we can all contribute into this effort.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. So let's support each other in order to advocate for textile conservation. Yes, Christine.
I think you need fundamental education, but you have every time learn more and workshops and courses and international connection, because I remember my knowledge about this in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 0 years, and now the meanings also change, and it says also causes why it's changed. But if you don't hear of for changing meanings, then it could be that you make something false. I think it's a long life learning and exchange Now we have some modern materials, but also to speak to, like we here, it's also an exchange. And for me, it's a main exchange, the ICOM CC conference this year in Valencia, in autumn, and I meet colleagues, and it's opened the mind. If you only speak with your colleagues in the near areas, they have nearly the same schools, the same meaning. But if you speak with other things, you think about, yes, it could be. And so I think it's, and you can also not say the former people or colleagues have done it not right, because they don't know it in the former times. They have done what they think what is good. And now you say, and also in my case, I say, what I have done on this case, now I wouldn't do it. I think you have to learn to hear, to speak. And in this case, is such a exchange, not only interesting for you, for me, but also for me, from you.
Yeah, I learn from each other.
Yes, it's a feedback.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, wonderful ladies, this afternoon. It's now 3:36. We're coming to an end to our webinar. We thank Christine from Dresden, Germany, and G. Roxas from University of Glasgow. Thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us. And I hope we can encourage other people out there to study textile conservation and look at especially our collections from the Philippines in different repositories, because they are needing our help to look at the textiles and also to conserve some of the important collections that we have. Okay, thank you everyone. To our participants, thank you so much for coming this afternoon and staying until the end. This webinar is recorded, but as per request by our resource persons, it should be, you send us a request that you want to have a copy of the presentation, and we can send you their slides and probably a link to the recorded webinar. The talk is organized by the Cordillera Textile Project, or the Corditex. This is an interdisciplinary research team studying textiles from northern Luzon and beyond. And we have a team of several professors from different disciplines studying textiles, from art, history, anthropology, chemistry, physics, ethnomathematics, and ethnobotany, as well as ergonomics. So we thank you and have a good afternoon. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Bye. And G.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the invitation.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Hello to Petra, Christine, Frau Petra. Say hello.
Yes,
Okay,
Marie.
I will now stop
I will stay here.
Okay, see you soon and bye-bye. Have a good night.
Yes,
Good morning.
We have now 8:38 a.m.
Oh, already, finally. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Pasok na po ako.
Sige, salamat.
Bye-bye.